Ever feel like you're missing out on this incredible centuries-long conversation? You know, the one that makes up Western thought and literature?
Yeah, like there are these foundational stories and ideas
Yeah.
that maybe everyone else just gets.
That feeling, standing just outside this fascinating, maybe slightly intimidating tradition. It's actually really common.
hmm
Well, you've definitely come to the right place. Welcome to the deep dive.
Here, you give us your sources.
And we sift through them, pull out the crucial insights, and basically make you feel genuinely well informed, but without, drowning you in details.
Think of it like unlocking the essential wisdom, getting the core ideas from these really foundational works.
Exactly. So today we're diving headfirst into timeless tales, Western literature from myths to masterpieces.
Right.
Our mission, basically explore the landmark works, the big ideas that have shaped Western culture, give you a kind of, well, a shortcut maybe to understanding the literary canon.
Right. Our goal for this deep dive is really to offer you, the learner, a clear, engaging map. Western literature's most significant moments.
Yeah.
We want to spark those aha moments,
Mm-hmm.
those connections that show why these stories still matter, and give you a solid launch pad if you want to explore further.
And we'll probably uncover some surprising threads too, right? Connections
Right.
between these
Oh,
works.
definitely.
Cool. So for this, we're drawing on excerpts from a 2025 book, Timeless Tales, Western Literature from Myths to Masterpieces by James Michael.
Okay.
We've got the preface, the intro, the table of contents, always a good roadmap,
Always helpful.
and detailed chapters covering, well, everything, from the ancient world right up to the big movements of the 20th century.
It's a really comprehensive journey laid out in the book, and what's fascinating is this anecdote the author mentions.
Oh, yeah.
Seeing a literary timeline in a library and suddenly realizing how these works, spread across huge stretches of time, are still kind of talking to each other.
That's such a great image, isn't it? This ongoing conversation.
It really is.
So, obviously, we won't cover every single writer or book. That'd be impossible.
Right.
But we are going to hit those pivotal moments, those really influential works. The aim is just to give you a solid chronological handle on this huge literary landscape without getting totally lost.
Makes sense. A guided tour.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Starting right at the beginning, the foundations, ancient and classical periods.
Yeah. The book rightly kicks off with Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey. You really can't talk about Western lit without starting there, can you?
No way! They're the bedrock.
These epics, they just establish so many of the building blocks that came after. Heroism, fate, the structure of a big sweeping story.
Mhm.
What strikes you most about them?
Well, the contrast in the heroes, even right at the start, it's incredible. You've got Achilles' almost godlike strength driven by this like primal rage
Yeah,
versus Odysseus, who's all about cleverness, strategy, and just sheer determination to get home.
two totally different models.
Right, like two blueprints for what a hero could be.
Yeah,
And the language, it's just so grand, the imagery so vivid. You get why they resonated for millennia, defining courage, honor, glory.
that contrast is absolutely key. Achilles is this more archaic, ideal, almost divine glory.
Yeah.
Odysseus hints at something more modern, maybe?
Mm.
Resilience, intelligence as heroic traits in themselves.
And you see how they laid the groundwork for so much Western storytelling.
Oh,
Plot, characters, good versus evil.
absolutely. Then the book pivots to Sappho's lyric poetry, which is a complete shift.
Oh, totally radical change from these huge outward epics to these intensely personal, emotional verses.
Right.
Sappho's stuff, love, desire gives us this incredibly direct line into individual feeling, especially from a female voice so early on.
It's astonishing, her influence, establishing personal experience as a valid, powerful subject for literature. A crucial step, really, recognizing that individual, especially female, experience.
Saving the way for later introspective writing.
And that sheer intimacy compared to Homer's public scale shows the breadth of early Greek expression.
And then there's Aesop's fables.
The fables.
Yeah. Short, sharp, always a moral tucked in, usually with animals acting like humans.
The tortoise and the hare, everyone knows that one.
Exactly, but they all teach these lasting life lessons so accessibly. The book even mentions a theory they might have originated in, like Aramaic culture.
That's a fascinating connection. Shows how intertwined early storytelling could be.
And their power is just distilling complex ethics into easy universal lessons, right? Timeless human stuff.
Definitely. They show the power of simple narrative for complex ideas. Their lasting presence speaks volumes. Okay, moving into the next chapter. The intense world of Greek tragedy and early historical writing.
Okay, so now we hit the big three of Greek tragedy. Aeschylus, Euripides, Sophocles. Things get really intense here. Fate, justice, the big questions about being human, all on stage.
It is intense.
Yeah.
Aeschylus, often called the father of tragedy, really sets the scene with his Oresteia,
Right, that huge cycle of plays.
exploring that bloody cycle of vengeance and the slow, difficult emergence of, well, justice. What strikes you about his work?
The sheer scope. A multi-part drama tackling family curses, societal obligations. It's so weighty, you really feel that tension between individual desire and community demands.
hmm Then you get Euripides, who takes a more, maybe, human-centered approach,
Mm-hmm.
especially with Medea.
Oh, Medea, powerful stuff.
Yeah, challenging traditional heroism and morality, centering it on a female perspective, the raw emotions of betrayal, revenge. Euripides really pushed the boundaries.
And the book points out his impact on a later feminist thought, right? Giving voice to female rage and suffering.
Absolutely. It's deeply unsettling, but forces you to confront uncomfortable truths.
And then Sophocles, Oedipus the King. Wow. Talk about fate and dramatic irony.
Oedipus is a masterclass in dramatic irony, isn't it? Where the audience knows things the characters don't, creates huge tension,
Yeah.
and it digs into destiny and the limits of our knowledge, moral responsibility. Makes you wonder, how much control do we really have?
It's absolutely chilling. The book also covers Greek comedy, Aristophanes, and then the birth of historical writing. Herodotus and Thucydides, bit of a shift there.
Indeed. Aristophanes, like in Lysistrata, shows comedy wasn't just for laughs. It tackled real political and social issues.
That whole scenario of women withholding, you know, to end a war, it's funny, but makes a serious point.
Exactly. And then Herodotus, the father of history, his histories on the Greco-Persian Wars blends facts with storytelling. Gives this fascinating look at human behavior, cultural interactions.
Right, more narrative, almost anecdotal. Then Thucydides comes along with his history of the Peloponnesian War, which is much more analytical.
Yeah, Thucydides is rigorous, empirical, really trying to dissect causes and effects, focusing on political power. It's fascinating seeing these two different approaches to history emerge so early.
Totally. Okay, next chapter. The philosophical heavyweights, Plato and Aristotle, plus the big Roman poets, Catullus, Virgil, Horace, Ovid. Packed chapter.
It is. Plato's dialogues, especially the Republic, laid so much intellectual groundwork. Justice, the ideal state, the allegory, the cave. How do you see Plato impacting literature itself? His idea of perfect forms versus our shattered reality influenced countless stories about truth and illusion.
Well, his ideas just seep into everything, don't they? That concept of ideal forms versus imperfect reality. It's fueled so many stories about truth, illusion, and Aristotle, his student, but with a very different take.
Aristotle's poetics is still foundational for storytelling. His analysis of tragedy, epic poetry, concepts like catharsis, that emotional release for the audience, his focus on character development, writers still grapple with this stuff. And his Nicomachean ethics still shapes our ideas of virtue, moral character.
Definitely. Then we shift to Roman poetry. Catullus feels so different from the more formal Greek stuff.
Yeah, he's raw emotion, intense intimacy, passion, almost surprisingly modern in how direct he is.
His style was really innovative, right? Pushing boundaries, focusing on personal experience in a new way.
Absolutely. Then Virgil's Aeneid, the great Roman epic, consciously drawing on Homer, but establishing a distinct Roman identity, destiny.
It's like their national origin story in verse. Aeneas' journey, emphasizing duty, piety, fate, clearly a model for later epics.
And Horace, his lyrical odes.
Beautifully crafted.
Such a wonderful blend of personal reflection and social commentary. Love, friendship, life being fleeting, all with this refined, witty style.
And finally, Ovid's Metamorphoses.
Ovid, master of myth and transformation, weaving this incredible tapestry of stories, often quite playfully.
The book highlights how revolutionary it was, blending grand myths with very human emotions.
Yeah, it marked a real shift, allowed for deeper, more personal engagement with the myths. Okay, next up, voices of power, statesmen, and historians.
So moving from poetry and philosophy to figures whose words had maybe a more direct impact, Cato the Elder, Cicero, Livy, Tacitus, Plutarch.
Right. Cato the Elder, with his austere moralism, emphasis on traditional Roman values in De Agri Cultura.
Yeah.
He embodies the early republic's ideals, simplicity, duty, civic responsibility, a powerful ethical tone.
Then Cicero, incredible orator, political thinker.
Hugely influential. His mastery of rhetoric, his writings on justice, the ideal state, shaped public discourse in Rome. And his ideas lasted, influencing Western political theory.
Absolutely. His ideas on natural law, the individual's role,
Mhm.
still debated. Then Livy gives us that sweeping, often dramatic history of Rome in Ab Urd Candida.
The grand story of Rome's rise, full of heroism, clear moral lessons about courage, civic duty, forges national identity.
But then Tacitus comes along with a much more critical view.
Yeah, Tacitus, in his Annals and Histories, offers this sharp, insightful, often cynical analysis of the Roman Empire, unflinchingly points out the moral ambiguities of power, the corruption he saw.
His skepticism about authority, his focus on observation, a big step in historical writing.
Definitely. And finally, Plutarch's parallel lies.
I love Plutarch. Pairing Greek and Roman figures, exploring their character, virtues, flaws, such a fascinating way to understand history through individual lives and leadership.
It really shaped the biography genre, emphasized how individual character matters in understanding historical events.
Okay.
The final chapter in this first section, the wisdom of Stoicism.
Ah, the Stoics. Seneca, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius. All about living virtuously, guided by reason, accepting what you can't control, finding inner peace.
Seneca blended Stoic philosophy with literature essays, intense tragedies, really examining human emotions, moral dilemmas.
Yeah, his reflections on anger, fear, finding happiness through virtue, timeless guidance.
His thoughts on life being fleeting, the importance of reason, really insightful. And then Epictetus, the former slave whose wisdom is so accessible.
Epictetus basically made Stoicism practical, didn't he? Focused on inner resilience, self-discipline.
Exactly. His discourses in Enchiridion are like a roadmap for contentment. Focus on what's in your power, your thoughts, your actions.
That distinction between external events and our internal responses. So powerful.
Incredibly empowering.
Mm.
Achieving freedom by mastering your mind. And finally, Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, committed, stoic.
Quite the combination.
His meditations offer this unique, intimate glimpse into a ruler striving for virtue under immense pressure. His reflections on mindfulness, humility, aligning actions with nature, they still resonate. Shows how Stoicism applies to personal and public life. His emphasis on interconnectedness, contributing to the common good.
And that famous line, quit talking about what a good man ought to be and be one.
Exactly. And his knack for reframing challenges. What gets in the way becomes the way.
Okay, that wraps up our first deep dive section, the ancient and classical foundations. It's amazing how these early works set up themes, genres, ideas that just keep getting explored.
It really is. From epic grandeur to lyric intimacy, tragedy's intensity to philosophy's inquiry, history's beginnings, this is the bedrock. Underscores the enduring power of these timeless tales. Shall we move into the medieval and Renaissance period?
Let's do it. Part 2 of the Christian imagination.
Right, and you can't talk about medieval literature without starting with the Bible. Old Testament, Gospels, Paul's letters. It's the cornerstone.
Absolutely. Themes of creation, covenant, moral law, love, forgiveness, redemption, compassion, they permeate everything.
The book touches on the significance of the Synoptic Gospels versus John's Gospel and Paul's writings on grace, faith, the church.
And his famous definition of love in 1 Corinthians 13, right?
Exactly. Foundational text for the entire worldview of the period. Then comes Augustine's Confessions.
A really early autobiography, isn't it? His journey of faith, self-discovery.
Exploring sin, redemption, divine grace. So remarkably candid, examining human flaws, really shaped the whole genre of autobiography.
Yeah, laying bare his soul like that was pretty groundbreaking. Okay, next section. Anglo-Saxon narratives in the Middle Ages.
So now we get Beowulf, the great Anglo-Saxon epic.
Heroism, loyalty, battling fate.
Yeah.
Really captures that warrior culture's ideals, doesn't it? Courage, honor, reputation.
Definitely. It's this fascinating blend of myth and history. Then, the Arthurian legends, particularly Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur.
King Arthur, the Round Table, the Holy Grail, chivalry, loyalty, love, betrayal, Lancelot, Guinevere, Merlin. Iconic characters.
Captures those chivalric ideals, courtly love, the whole code, really influential. And alongside Arthur, we have Robin Hood.
The outlaw hero, social justice, rebellion against tyranny, camaraderie, loyalty, champion of the underdog. Such an enduring figure in English folklore.
Resisting oppression. That theme resonates strongly. Then we move to Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales.
Ah, Chaucer, a giant leap forward. Those pilgrim stories reflecting medieval life in all its variety.
The general prologue alone gives us such vivid characters. The knight, the wife of Bath, the pardoner, the miller.
And the tales themselves. The knight's tale about chivalry and love. The miller's tale, much more down-to-earth comedy.
The wife of Bath's tale challenging sexual roles, arguing for mutual respect. The Partner's Tale, a chilling look at greed.
It's brilliant. The innovative structure, the characterization, the snapshot of social hierarchies and cultural shifts. You can see how it's a precursor to the modern novel.
Absolutely. Okay, shifting focus now to Northern European myth and legend.
Right. So the Norse Eddas, the Poetic Edda, and Snorri Sturluson's Prose Edda.
Tales of gods, heroes, the cosmos. They give us insight into Norse beliefs about fate, honor, the interplay between divine and mortal, crucial guides to the mythology and poetics.
Huge influence on later literature and art, obviously. Tolkien, Wagner.
Mm-hmm. Then Saxo Grammaticus's Gesta Danorum, Danish legends mixed with history, shaping Danish identity with figures like Amleth, the inspiration for Hamlet.
No way. Okay, that's a cool connection.
Yeah, gives a glimpse into medieval Scandinavian culture, virtues, leadership, and the saga of the Volsunds.
More heroism and tragedy, the Volsund family, Sigurd the Dragon Slayer, destiny versus personal choice again.
Influential in how heroism gets portrayed. Then the Icelandic sagas.
Viking Age history and society, right? Blending fact and fiction, lives of notable figures, family complexities, blood feuds.
Capturing the values, honor, loyalty, revenge, essential for understanding Norse culture and identity. And Snorri Sturluson again, with Heimskringla.
Lives of the Norwegian kings. Viking Age to early medieval times. History of Norway, kingship, power dynamics.
He was a pivotal figure in preserving this history. And finally, the Finnish Kalevala.
Finland's national epic, compiled by Elias Lönnrot from oral traditions. Folklore, mythical heroes like Väinämöinen, Kullervo.
Hugely important for Finnish culture and national identity. And another source, Tolkien drew on heavily for Lord of the Rings.
Wow, the influence of these northern myths is really widespread. Okay, next chapter, the rise of scholasticism.
So we get Dante's Divine Comedy, an absolute cornerstone of Western literature.
Journey through the afterlife, hell, purgatory, paradise, exploring moral implications, theological concepts.
Integrating classical references with medieval theology, views on sin, redemption, divine justice. Written in the vernacular, which was huge, highly allegorical.
Just monumental. And alongside Dante, Thomas Aquinas and his Summa Theologica.
Right. Aquinas integrated Aristotelian thought into Christian theology. Faith and reason working together.
Creating this comprehensive framework for understanding truth. Philosophy and theology in harmony.
Reshaped medieval thought, laid groundwork for modern philosophy. You see its influence on ethical and metaphysical themes in literature, too.
Okay, now we hit the Renaissance proper. Renaissance humanism.
Starting with Boccaccio's The Decameron, short story set during the Black Death.
Themes of love, fate, the human condition. Quite realistic with moral lessons, a wide range of characters. Another precursor to modern storytelling.
Definitely. Then Petrarch, the father of humanism, and his songbook.
Lyric poetry, sonnets, deep personal emotions, especially his unrequited love for Laura.
Innovative use of language and form laid the groundwork for Renaissance poetry. That introspective approach to love, celebrating individual experience, human emotions, creativity. Huge shift.
And Erasmus with works like In Praise of Folly.
Using satire to challenge societal norms, church corruption, advocating for genuine Christian values, education.
Trying to reform society through intellectual engagement, critical thinking, self-reflection, really pushing for change.
Exactly. Okay, that sets the stage nicely for the Elizabethan and Enlightenment period, starting with the Bard himself.
William Shakespeare. Where do you even begin?
Right. The book gives an overview of his genres, tragedies, comedies, histories, and his unparalleled exploration of human nature and society. His impact on the English language alone is immense.
Let's hit some major plays. Romeo and Juliet. Youthful passion, family conflict, love, fate, consequences of hatred. Timeless.
Absolutely. A Midsummer Night's Dream. Love, desire, fairies, lovers getting mixed up, explores the absurdity and irrationality of love, its transformative power, reality versus illusion.
Then Julius Caesar.
Yeah.
Politics, betrayal, ambition's consequences. Brutus and Cassius's moral dilemmas, loyalty, honor, the tragic fallout of political plotting.
Such a powerful political drama. And Hamlet.
Mm.
Revenge, madness, that existential contemplation, to be or not to be.
Grief, betrayal, the quest for truth, so complex.
Then Macbeth. Ambition, power, moral decay, his rise and fall, the corrupting nature of power, supernatural influence, psychological turmoil, guilt, chilling.
And King Lear. Power, family loyalty, descending into madness, complexities of love, betrayal, the human condition, vulnerability of power, unpredictable relationships.
Just devastating. And The Tempest. Magic, forgiveness, redemption, Prospero's story, justice, reconciliation, often seen as reflecting Shakespeare's own artistic journey.
And we can't forget the historical plays Henry IV, Richard III, exploring English kings, political dynamics,
Uh-huh.
social issues, leadership, power.
And his poetry. The sonnet's themes of love, time, beauty, mortality.
Yeah.
Sonnet 18, Shall I Compare Thee, and narrative poems like A Lover's Complaint, exploring desire and societal judgment.
She just covered so much ground. Incredible. Okay, moving beyond Shakespeare in this era, Elizabethan to Milton.
This transition period reflects big cultural, political, religious shifts. You have Spenser's The Faerie Queen.
A huge allegorical poem. Virtue, Elizabethan ideals, complex narrative, rich symbolism, chivalry, moral character, blending classical and contemporary stuff.
Very ambitious. Then Marlowe and Johnson, elevating English drama.
Johnson's Volpone, sharp wit, satire, human greed and folly.
And Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, exploring darker sides of ambition, desire, intellectual existential struggle.
Both really powerful playwrights. And then the King James Bible in 1611.
Profoundly shaped English literature and religious thought. Majestic prose, poetic cadence, huge impact on the spiritual and cultural landscape.
Definitely. And finally, Milton's Paradise Lost.
Epic retelling of the biblical story of the fall. Themes of free will, redemption, good versus evil. Written amidst political and religious turmoil of the English Civil War.
Intricate language, deep philosophical questions, importance of individual choice, another absolute landmark.
Truly. Okay, next major development. The dawn of the novel.
The birth of the novel as we kind of know it. Focus on individual experience, social critique, reality versus imagination.
The book starts with Cervantes' Don Quixote, technically Spanish, from 1605, but considered the birth of the modern novel.
Right. The deluded nobleman reviving chivalry.
Right.
Explores reality versus illusion, sanity, heroism, the power of literature, humor, sadness, critique of society. Groundbreaking.
Totally. Then Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, often called the first English novel in the modern sense, from 1719.
Personal narrative, adventure, survival, moral reflection. Inspired by a real castaway, Alexander Selkirk.
It's seen as an allegory of human endeavor. Crusoe's ingenuity, building shelter, growing crops, domesticating animals, embodies that Protestant ethic: hard work, faith, resilience.
But it also touches on the complexities of colonialism, right? His interactions with Friday power, race, exploitation.
Yes, those elements are definitely there. It's got this straightforward narrative style, but raises moral and ethical dilemmas. Defoe also wrote Moll Flanders' Journal of the Plague Year. Very influential.
Then Swiss Gulliver's Travels, satire comes roaring back.
Oh yeah. 1726. Voyages to fantastical lands, Lilliputians, Houyhnhnms, and Job. But it's all an allegory for human folly. A sharp critique of European politics, culture, morality.
Fights deep into the absurdities and contradictions of the Enlightenment ideals he saw.
Absolutely biting satire.
Yeah.
And then Stern's The Life and Opinions of Tristram Shandy Gentleman, totally different again.
Breaks all the rules. 1759, digressions, nonlinear plot, playful typography, explores memory, identity.
It's deliberately fragmented. Philosophical musings, tangents, internal thoughts. Shows the subjective nature of storytelling. Laid groundwork for modern narrative experimentation.
Really ahead of its time. Okay, let's look at spiritual journeys and allegory.
Works examining the soul's journey, the divine. Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress is key here.
An allegory of the Christian life, 1678. Christian's journey from the city of destruction to the celestial city.
Symbolic characters, evangelist, hopeful, despair. Obstacles like the Slough of Despond, Vanity Fair, Doubting Castle. Reflects the Puritan experience, salvation through faith.
Vivid personifications, accessible style. It had huge appeal, touching on universal human trials.
Immensely popular. Then Swedenborg's writings, like Heaven and Hell. Much more mystical.
Spiritual Visions, 1758. Describes heaven, hell, the spirit world in intricate detail. Cosmology, angels, spirits.
A theological and mystical approach. Claimed direct access to spiritual knowledge. Heaven is harmony. Hell is self-imposed suffering from selfish desires. Nuanced view of afterlife, intermediate states.
And his concept of correspondences, physical world reflecting the spiritual.
Exactly. Influenced romanticism, transcendentalism, symbolism. Figures like Blake, Emerson, Balzac were readers.
Interesting connection. Okay, shifting gears again. Voices of reason and revolution, the Enlightenment thinkers.
Emphasis on reason, individualism, societal reform. Voltaire leads the charge with his wit, critiquing institutions.
Candide, satire exposing the absurdity of blind optimism, 1759. Argues for freedom of thought, tolerance, reason, confronts life's harsh realities.
A powerful critique of naive faith. Then Rousseau, arguing for humanity's natural goodness, corrupted by society.
The social contract, 1762. Legitimate political authority comes from a social contract. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. General will, individual freedom, collective responsibility.
Hugely influential on democratic thought, revolutions, and John Locke laying groundwork for modern democracy.
Two treatises of government, 1689. Argued against the divine right of kings, social contract protects life, liberty, property, authority from consent of the governed.
Fundamental ideas for the American and French revolutions, modern citizenship. Then Thomas Paine, galvanizing support for American independence.
Common sense, 1776. Clear case for independence. Duty to overthrow oppression, written in accessible prose.
And the American crisis during the Revolution, 1776-83, encouraging perseverance, framing freedom as a moral imperative.
Really powerful pamphlets, and Mary Wollstonecraft, a pioneering voice in early feminism.
A Vindication of the Rights of Women, 1792, challenged traditional women's roles, argued for education empowerment, said women had the same rational capacities as men.
Advocated for sexual equality, women's right to education, foundational feminist text.
Absolutely. This brings us to the end of the Elizabethan and Enlightenment section and right to the cusp of Romanticism, starting with a truly unique figure, William Blake.
Ah, Blake. Poet, painter, printmaker. Transcends categories. Spirituality, social critique, imagination, all wrapped up together.
Definitely. The book highlights his poetry collection, Songs of Innocence from 1789.
Joy, wonder, purity, connection to the divine, the lamb, celebrating childhood, nature, direct link to God.
Contrasted with Songs of Experience 5 years later. Darker aspects, suffering, oppression, loss of innocence, the chimney sweeper.
Critiquing social injustices like child labor, the effects of the Industrial Revolution, he had a really radical vision.
Critical of organized religion, materialism, mechanization, advocated for personal and spiritual liberation, and his prophetic works, The Marriage of Heaven and Hell, Jerusalem.
Complex theological, philosophical ideas, synthesizing opposites, aiming for a new way of perceiving reality if the doors of perception were cleansed.
Everything would appear to man as it is infinite, and his illuminated manuscripts, fusing visual art and poetry, multifaceted experience, vibrant colors, intricate designs.
Unique method. He saw imagination as this divine faculty, right? Essential for seeing deeper truths, transcending the material world.
Yes, the source of inspiration.
Like,
What is now proved was once only imagined. And poems like Auguries of Innocence from 1803.
to see a world in a grain of sand, eternity in an hour. That interconnectedness, infinite potential in the small things.
Beautiful. His legacy is huge. Influenced Romanticism, modernism, exploration of spirituality, social critique, the power of imagination. Okay, now on to the core romantics.
Right. Emphasis on individual emotion, nature, imagination, reaction against Enlightenment rationalism. Wordsworth and Coleridge kick things off.
Founding figures. Lyrical ballads in 1798 revolutionized poetry. Focus on personal experience, emotional authenticity.
Wordsworth's beauty of nature, its transformative power. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Think, I wandered lonely as a cloud. Awe, serenity, nature's restorative power.
And Coleridge nature, but also the supernatural, the mysterious. The rhyme of the ancient mariner. Harrowing journey, thin redemption, vivid imagery, lyrical language, spiritual dimensions.
He prayeth well who loveth well both man and bird and beast. That connection.
Exactly. Then Shelley and Keats, expanding the romantic tradition. Imagination, beauty, melancholy.
Shelley, revolutionary ideals, social issues, imagination transcending the material, poets as unacknowledged legislators of the world.
Ode to the west wind, to a skylark, yearning for change, nature connecting to the human spirit.
And Keats, sensual beauty, melancholy, life's transient nature, deep appreciation for art, ode to a nightingale, ode on a Grecian urn.
Beauty intertwined with loss. A thing of beauty is a joy forever, offering solace and inspiration.
Such powerful voices. Now, the flip side, the Gothic and the fantastic.
Horror, romance, the supernatural, exploring darker facets of human experience, psychological depth, moral dilemmas, the uncanny societal anxieties. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is a huge one.
Gothic elements plus philosophical questions. Nature of humanity, responsibility, ethics of science, boundaries of life and death.
Alienation, pursuit of knowledge without morality. Dark settings, isolation, monstrosity reflecting societal fears, defying natural laws. A precursor of science fiction, really.
Definitely. Then Edgar Allan Poe, master of the macabre.
Short stories of mystery, madness, mortality, the supernatural. Ligeia, The Fall of the House of Usher, Mask of the Red Death, Pit and the Pendulum, Telltale Heart, Black Cat, Cask of Amontillado.
Chilling dread, haunting imagery, psychological tension, fragility of sanity, guilt, fear. Unreliable narrators, intricate plots.
And his poetry, The Raven, Annabelle Lee. Atmosphere, sound, loss, longing. Plus, he basically invented the detective genre with stories like The Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Right, Dupin. Okay,
Yeah.
Hawthorne. Moral complexity, Gothic elements again. Morality, guilt, human nature, Puritan background.
A Scarlet Letter. History's psychological torment, societal judgment, consequences of sin.
And The House of the Seven Gables. Guilt, retribution, family history of greed, murder. Dark atmosphere as metaphor for past burdens. Hereditary sin.
His short stories, too. The Birthmark, Young Goodman Brown. Dark Side of Desire, Moral Complexities. Allegory, symbolism, psychological exploration.
And Bram Stoker's Dracula, the iconic vampire novel.
Sexuality, fear, clash of modernity and supernatural. Epistolary format builds suspense. Reflects Victorian anxiety, sexuality, immigration, the other.
Dracula as seduction and horror, huge influence on the whole vampire mythos.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The next section looks at the novel solidifying its place, foundations of the novel within this romantic Victorian period, authors engaging with social issues.
Jane Austen, brilliant observations of social mores, relationships, class, sexual roles.
Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, wit, irony, critique of expectations for women, marriages, social mobility, intelligent, independent heroines finding agency within constraints.
Love her work. Then Sir Walter Scott shaping the historical novel.
Ivanhoe. Historical detail, tensions between classes, cultures, blend of romance, adventure, fostered national pride in Scotland and England, made historical fiction hugely popular.
And the Bronte sisters, exploring social issues through compelling narratives.
Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. Strong, independent protagonist challenging constraints, themes of class, sex, moral integrity, love, identity, autonomy, finding love on her own terms.
A landmark novel. Then Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights, much darker vision.
Passionate, almost savage relationship between Catherine and Heathcliff, obsession, revenge, social class, poetic language, haunting narrative, challenges traditional morality and order.
Utterly unique. Anne Bronte.
Agnes Grey, semi-autobiographical look at a governess's struggles. And The Tenet of Wildfell Hall, challenging societal sex roles, alcoholism, social norms. Considered one of the first feminist novels. Very bold for its time.
The Brontes were quite a force. This leads us naturally to another giant of the novel, Charles Dickens.
Ugh, Dickens. Master of the novel. Huge impact. Critiques of Victorian society, social reform, class disparity, the underprivileged.
Yeah.
Vivid characters, intricate plots.
And his novels were often serialized, right? Created this communal reading experience.
Exactly. Let's touch on some key examples. Oliver Twist. Child labor, poverty, inhumane treatment of the poor.
Please, sir, I want some more. The criminal underworld, Fagin's complex morality.
Then Great Expectations. Coming of age, ambition, social status, moral growth, Pip's journey, finding out who he really is, true gentility versus wealth. Miss Havisham, unforgettable.
Haunting character. And A Christmas Carol, Redemption of Scrooge, Spirit of Giving, still so relevant.
Absolutely. Other major works, David Copperfield, Resilient Self-Discovery, partly autobiographical, Bleak House, Critique of the Legal System, A Tale of Two Cities, French Revolution backdrop.
The book lists his whole novel catalog and his Christmas stories, too. Themes of generosity, redemption, holiday spirit run through those.
His legacy is immense, sparked critical conversations about social injustice. Pivotal Victorian figure, celebrated for characters and social commentary.
Definitely. So, staying in this era, the Victorian age, zenith of the British Empire, flourishing literature, social change, moral questions, imperialism.
Tennyson, monumental figure in poetry. Idylls of the King shaped adventure literature using myth for moral lessons, heroism, honor, King Arthur again.
His other poetry, too, The Charge of the Light Brigade, In Memoriam, emotional depth, loss, valor, search for meaning, duty, moral implications.
Very much the voice of the age in many ways. Then Lewis Carroll taking us somewhere completely different.
Whimsical realms, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland through the Looking Glass, challenging conventional narrative, questioning reality.
Cheshire Cat, Mad Hatter, Red Queen. The rabbit hole itself entering the unknown, shifting perception. Eat me, drink me transformations. The bewildering nature of childhood in an adult world.
Playful language, absurdity, re-examining perception, tensions between imagination and rationality. Brilliant stuff.
George Eliot, Marianne Evans, of course. Nuanced exploration of character and society.
Middlemarch, often called one of the greatest English novels. Constraints on individuals, especially women. Social norms, love, ambition, social change, moral implications of choices. So rich.
Incredible psychological depth. Then, Robert Louis Stevenson, Adventure and Duality.
Treasure Island.
Mm.
Pursuit of pirate treasure. Loyalty, morality. Jim Hawkins, Long John Silver. Classic adventure.
And Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Duality, identity, darker aspects of human nature. Gothic horror meets psychological study.
Plus his poetry, like The Land of the Living, exploring existential themes. Very versatile.
Then Oscar Wilde, sharp wit, audacious themes.
The Picture of Dorian Gray. Aestheticism, social critique, morality, pursuit of beauty at all costs. Dorian stays young, the portrait bears the scars of his sins.
Dangers of vanity, hedonism. Ethical responsibilities tied to beauty. A cautionary tale wrapped in dazzling prose.
And Rudyard Kipling, imperialism and identity.
The Jungle Book, reflecting cultures encountered during the British Empire. His poetry, If, the gods of the copybook headings, emphasizes resilience, duty, moral integrity.
Narratives like Kim and The Man Who Would Be King explore intersections of culture and power, often seen as complex, sometimes critical of colonialism, sometimes reflecting its attitudes but appreciating diverse experiences.
A complicated figure.
Yeah.
And Joseph Conrad, colonialism, morality, human nature again.
Heart of Darkness. Journey into the Congo, exploring ethical dilemmas of imperialism, its impact on both colonizer and colonized. Marlowe and Kurtz.
Deeply unsettling. And Lord Jim, Nostromo, exploring duty, complex human motives, moral ambiguities. Conrad delves into the darker aspects of civilization, humanity's capacity for good and evil.
Powerful, challenging writer. Okay, let's cross the Atlantic, The Voice of a New Nation. American literature finding its feet.
Yeah, grappling with the struggles and complexities of a growing nation. Distinct forms and themes emerging. Identity, morality, the American experience. James Fenimore Cooper, pioneering the historical novel in America.
The Last of the Mohicans. French and Indian War backdrop. Conflict. Cultural identity on the American frontier. Portrayal of Native Americans and settlers, exploring race, cultural encounters.
Then Washington Irving, master of the short story, early American folklore.
The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, Rip Van Winkle. Developing American identity with humor and charm, engaging narratives, local color, made the short story prominent. Universal themes, too.
Very important figure, Herman Melville, obsession and humanity.
Moby Dick, Ishmael's voyage, Ahab's consuming obsession with the white whale, humanity versus nature, daunting symbolism, complex characters, existential questions.
The meaning of existence in a different universe. A truly massive, ambitious novel.
Walt Whitman,
Yeah.
celebrating individuality and democracy.
Leaves of Grass. Bold new voice, free verse. Capturing the American spirit, diversity, interconnectedness. Themes of love, nature. Finding the individual voice within the collective. Hugely influential.
Louisa May Alcott, family and societal expectations.
Little Women. The March Sisters, Jo, Meg, Beth, Amy. Ambition, family roles, complexities of womanhood, different ideals and aspirations. Balancing family and individuality. Enduringly popular.
And Mark Twain, humor and social critique combined.
The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Spirited childhood exploits navigating societal expectations.
And The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Huck's perspective, escaping constraints. Powerful critique of race, morality, slavery, friendship, individual conscience versus society. A masterpiece.
Controversial then and now, but incredibly important. He also wrote The Prince and the Pauper, a Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's court. Showed his versatility, blending humor with biting social critique.
A giant of American literature. Okay, now broadening the scope. Literature and translation during this period.
Recognizing how literature transcends borders offers unique perspectives. The Russian novel gets major focus. Realism, psychological exploration.
Tolstoy, War and Peace, Anna Karenina. Morality, free will, complex relationships. Exploring the essence of the human condition on an epic scale.
And Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. The Brothers Karamazov. Deep psychological insight, existential questions, faith, guilt, redemption, intense stuff.
Then Turgenev, Fathers and Sons. Social change, generational conflict, shifting ideologies, nuanced characters capturing Russian society helped pave the way for realism.
Three giants right there. Then French novels. Stendhal's The Red and the Black.
Psychology, society, ambition, love. Social stratification, seen as a precursor to psychological fiction.
And Victor Hugo, epic narratives, social consciousness. Les Misérables.
Personal struggles against historical backdrop. Justice, redemption, resilience. Jean Valjean. Morality, compassion. So powerful.
And The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Love, beauty, societal prejudice, Quasimodo Esmeralda, helped save the actual cathedral, lyrical prose, strong social commentary.
He had such scope.
Yeah.
And Jules Verne, adventure, scientific imagination.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Journey to the Center of the Earth, exploration, innovation, paved the way for science fiction.
Around the World in 80 Days, The Mysterious Island, too. Intricate plots, scientific concepts, inspiring awe of the natural world.
Then Scandinavian writers, Hans Christian Andersen.
Fairy tales, The Little Mermaid, The Ugly Duckling. Enchanting, but often with deeper, sometimes darker, moral lessons.
Soren Kierkegaard, the philosopher. Either were. Existence, faith, individuality. Complexities of choice, ethical decision-making. Personal experience, subjective truth.
Aesthetic versus ethical life. Anxiety of choice, search for authenticity, shaped existential thought.
August Strindberg. Playwright. The Father, Miss Julie, a dream play. Conflict, psychological depth.
Big figure in Swedish literature, associated with naturalism, realistic portrayal, influence of environment, heredity, psychological battles, authority, manipulation, fragility.
Tumultuous relationships, class, sex. Later moved towards expressionism, blurring reality and dreams. Explored darker aspects of the psyche. Influenced modern drama.
And Nudhamson, novelist, hunger, pan, modern themes, human consciousness.
Psychological portraits. Alienation, desperation, search for identity, hunger. Nature and human experience, retreat into wilderness, love, madness, beauty of nature, Pan, depths of human existential dilemmas. Vital to modern literature, though his later politics were problematic.
Right, important to acknowledge that complexity. Okay, rounding out this era, folk and fairy tales.
Oral traditions, preserving cultural heritage, moral lessons, Arabian Nights, or 1001 Nights.
Middle Eastern folklore, Aladdin, Sinbad, Scheherazade telling stories to survive, adventure, romance, morality. The book mentions translations by Edward Lane and Richard Burton, Burton's being more explicit, shocking Victorians, enduring influence.
Definitely. The Brothers Grimm, Grimm's fairy tales, preserving German folklore.
Hansel and Gretel, Snow White, Rumpelstiltskin, Rapunzel, Cinderella, moral lessons, cultural insights, fundamental to Western culture, partly via Disney, of course.
Irish mythology and folk tales. Cuchulainn, Tuatha Dé Danann, heroism, honor, the supernatural. The Banshee adds that haunting dimension, preserving Irish culture, inspiring contemporary arts. Nordic folklore, supernatural beings like trolls. The three Billy Goats Gruff, east of the sun and west of the moon, adventure, humanity versus supernatural, moral lessons, wildness of nature.
And the Brer Rabbit stories. African-American folklore.
Resilience, cleverness, trickster figure outwitting adversaries, social commentary, resistance, survival, preserving cultural identity through storytelling during slavery and beyond.
Important collection. Okay, that brings us to the 20th century and modernist breakthroughs.
Big shift here. Experimentation, fragmentation, reflecting the complexities of modern experience. Consciousness, identity, alienation, a sense of a disordered world after World War I especially. Proust's In Search of Lost Time.
Massive work, memory in time, meticulous exploration of sensory experience, relationships, intricacies of human life, deep introspection, passage of time, essence of existence.
James Joyce. Revolutionary narrative form, especially stream of consciousness.
Ulysses. Following characters through a single day in Dublin, capturing chaotic inner lives. Mundane details become profound explorations of consciousness.
Dubliner's stories exploring paralysis, desire for escape in Irish life. A portrait of the artist as a young man, artist's development, individuality versus societal expectations. Challenging stuff.
Virginia Woolf. Fluidity of time and thought also uses stream of consciousness.
Mrs. Dalloway. To the Lighthouse.
Okay.
Complexities of human relationships, societal expectations, especially gender roles.
And her essay, A Room of One's Own, argues for women's need for financial independence and autonomy to create literature. Hugely influential.
Absolutely. Franz Kafka. The bizarre and absurd reflecting modern anxieties.
The Metamorphosis. Gregor Samsa wakes up as a giant insect. Existential dread, alienation.
The Trial, the Castle. Individuals adrift in incomprehensible bureaucracies. Nightmarish narratives. That feeling of existential angst became known as Kafkaesque.
A powerful descriptor, Ezra Pound. Modernist poetry. The artist is the antenna of the race.
The Cantos. Huge, complex poem drawing on history, culture, personal reflection, multiple languages, literary traditions woven together.
And short poems like In a Station of the Metro exemplifies Imagist principles. Clarity, precision, power of the image. Make it new was his slogan.
T.S. Eliot. Reshaped poetic expression.
The Wasteland. Post-war disillusionment captured through fragmented imagery, intricate illusions, spiritual emptiness, despair of a fractured society. Hugely influential.
And the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock. Modern man's isolation, self-doubt, grappling with existential questions. Do I dare disturb the universe?
Unforgettable lines. D.H. Lawrence, confronting societal norms, especially around sexuality and relationships.
Sons and Lovers, Lady Chatterley's Lover. Candid portrayals, quest for authenticity. Tensions between individual desires and societal expectations. Critiques of industrialization and its effect on the human spirit.
Often controversial, but pushing boundaries. Okay, let's look at stages of change, the evolution of modern theater.
Theater as a mirror to human experience, societal struggles. Henrik Ibsen from Norway is pivotal. Challenging norms, moral conventions, realism takes hold.
A Doll's House, exploding traditional gender roles, Nora leaving her husband, caused a huge stir.
Peer Gynt, more poetic, exploring self and identity. Hedda Gabler, constraints on women. Ghosts, heredity, societal hypocrisy. An enemy of the people, individual morality versus social pressure, really tackled tough issues.
Anton Chekhov in Russia, character-driven narratives, subtext, psychological depth. Not much happens externally, but emotionally resonant.
The Cherry Orchard, Three Sisters. Nuanced exploration of human emotions, relationships, portraying the ordinary with profound meaning. Master of atmosphere.
George Bernard Shaw, Irish playwright known for sharp wit, social critique.
Pygmalion, basis for My Fair Lady. St. Joan, tackling gender, class, morality with humor, challenging norms, provoking thought, used theater for debate.
Eugene O'Neill, bringing serious drama to the American stage. Family dynamics, personal struggles.
Long Day's Journey into Night. Autobiographical, raw family portrait, The Iceman Cometh. Exploring addiction, identity, darker facets of life with raw authenticity. Won the Nobel Prize.
Thornton Wilder, finding beauty in everyday life.
Our Town. Minimal staging, depicting life, love, death in a small town. Connections between people, passage of time, simplicity and profundity of human experience. Pulitzer winner.
Tennessee Williams, Desire, mental illness, the Southern experience. Poetic language.
A Streetcar Named Desire. Blanche Dubois, Stanley Kowalski. The Glass Menagerie, vivid imagery, deep emotional responses, characters grappling with inner demons, illusions versus reality.
Arthur Miller, The American Experience, critiques of the American dream, societal pressures.
Death of a Salesman, Willie Loman's Tragedy. The Crucible, Salem Witch Trials as allegory for McCarthyism. Moral dilemmas, reflecting on values and responsibilities. Conscience of American theater for a time.
Samuel Beckett, Irish playwright, key figure in absurdist theater.
Waiting for Godot. Two characters wait endlessly for someone who never arrives.
Right.
Explores nature of existence, human condition, questioning the meaning or meaninglessness of life. Profoundly influential.
Wow, a century of huge change on stage. Now back to the broader American experience in 20th century literature.
Realism, social critique, the human condition continue. Theodore Dreiser's Sister Carrie. Harsh urban life, moral complexities of pursuing happiness, the American dream proving elusive.
Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. Expose of the brutal Chicago meatpacking industry, caused public outrage, led to actual food safety reforms, muckraking journalism as novel.
Edgar Lee Masters' Spoon River Anthology, shattering the idyllic small-town myth, free verse epitaphs, confessions from the grave, dark secrets revealed.
Sinclair Lewis, Main Street Babbitt, social critiques of conformity, materialism in middle-class America, first American Nobel laureate in literature.
F. Scott Fitzgerald, chronicler of the Jazz Age, The Great Gatsby.
Decadence, idealism, social stratification, the allure and emptiness of the American dream, moral decline, wealth versus human connection, lyrical prose, iconic.
It's Hemingway. Spare prose style, iceberg theory, exploring human existence amidst violence, loss, disillusionment.
The Sun Also Rises, post-war lost generation, a farewell to arms, brutality of war, fragile love. For whom the bell tolls, Spanish Civil War, sacrifice, loyalty, the old man and the sea, resilience, perseverance, dignity. Another Nobel winner.
William Faulkner. Complex exploration of Southern identity, family legacy, the burden of the past, stream of consciousness, fragmented realities, Yucatán County.
The Sound and the Fury. Decline of a once great family, time, memory, decay. Challenging but powerful, also a Nobel laureate.
John Steinbeck. Focusing on working-class struggles, often during the Great Depression.
Of Mice and Men, fragile dreams, friendship, isolation. The Grapes of Wrath, displaced Dust Bowl farmers journeying to California. Poverty, social injustice, resilience, dignity, hope. Deep empathy, social commentary, Nobel Prize again.
J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye. Voice of adolescent angst and alienation. Holden Caulfield. hugely influential, captured a generation's disillusionment.
The Beat Generation, Kerouac's On the Road, Ginsberg's Howl, challenging norms, celebrating freedom, spontaneity, rebellion, countercultural narratives.
And the broader counterculture. Ken Kesey's One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, critique of institutional authority conformity, led to ban on certain lobotomy practices.
Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, gonzo journalism, blurring fact and fiction, drug-fueled exploration of the American psyche, the death of the 60s dream.
A turbulent century reflected in its literature. Now for something completely different. Imagination children's classics.
Igniting imagination, fantastical realms, life lessons, Mother Goose rhymes, traditional, foundational for early childhood, literacy, rhythm, rhyme, sometimes subtle satire too.
L. Frank Baum's The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Vivid fantasy world, friendship, bravery, self-discovery, brains, heart, courage, lasting cultural impact.
Etrix Potter's The Tale of Peter Rabbit and others. Gentle stories of pastoral life, charming animal characters, adventure, moral lessons about obedience, consequences, beautiful illustrations too.
Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows. More pastoral whimsy. Friendship among riverbank animals. Mole, ratty, badger, toad. Loyalty, the comforts of home. Enduring charm.
Ella Montgomery's Anne of Green Gables. Spirited heroine, girlhood, self-identity, power, imagination, finding belonging, importance of friendship, beloved character.
J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan. Eternal childhood, escapism, bittersweet look at growing up, magic of imagination, passage of time, Neverland.
A. Milne's Winnie the Pooh. Endearing adventures in the Hundred-Acre Wood. Humor, wisdom, friendship, loyalty, beauty of everyday moments. Characters reflecting aspects of human nature. Childhood wonder.
And Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie series. Pioneer life, family challenges and triumphs, resilience, hard work, appreciation for nature, semi-autobiographical, important portrayal of American expansion, though now viewed with more critical lens regarding Native American portrayal.
These stories shape so many childhoods. Okay, final section. Contemporary voices, mostly mid to late 20th century figures here.
Reflecting current complexities, existential dilemmas, societal injustices, provoking critical thought. Ezek Dinesen, Karen Blixen. Out of Africa, memoir of her time in Kenya, breathtaking landscapes, cultural encounters, love, loss, and 7 Gothic tales, more atmospheric, darker themes, exploring the human spirit.
Albert Camus, French existentialist. The Stranger, Meursault's detachment, senseless murder, society's judgment, explores absurdity of life, need to create meaning.
And The Myth of Sisyphus, philosophical essay on the absurd, finding personal significance, freedom through rebellion against meaninglessness, Nobel Prize winner.
Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl, profoundly moving. Innocence amidst Holocaust horror, life in hiding, hopes, dreams, personal perspective on atrocities, symbol of resilience, enduring human spirit.
William Golding's Lord of the Flies. British schoolboys stranded on an island descend into savagery, explores darkness within human nature, thin veneer of civilization, loss of innocence, morality, primal instincts. Chilling. Nobel Prize.
James Baldwin. Powerful voice on race, identity, faith in America. Go Tell It on the Mountain. Semi-autobiographical, religion, family, sexuality, and Harlem. Essays are also incredibly important, exploring pain and hope, seeking place in a turbulent world.
Vladimir Nabokov. Russian émigré, master stylist. Lolita. Controversial exploration of obsession, morality, aesthetics through Humbard's pursuit of a young girl. Complex emotional landscapes, challenging societal norms, desire, ethics, nature of art, brilliant, unsettling prose.
Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, The Fountainhead, philosopher of objectivism, individualism versus collectivism.
Atlas Shrugged depicts a dystopian America where productive individuals withdraw their talents. Critique of collectivism. Fountainhead features an uncompromising architect embodying individualism, integrity, champions capitalism, personal freedom. Very influential in certain circles, also highly controversial. The book presents her ideas neutrally as part of the literary landscape.
Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, moral dilemmas in the American South, race, justice, moral growth through Scout Finch's eyes, prejudice, empathy, human behavior. Pulitzer winner, deeply ingrained in American culture.
Joseph Heller's Catch-22. Satire of war and bureaucracy. Absurd, no-win situation faced by bomber pilots. Critiques illogical military rules, human cost of conflict, irrationality of authority. The term Catch-22 entered the language.
Marshall McLuhan, media theorist but influential on culture. The medium is the message, argues the form of a medium shapes perception more than its content. Technology's impact on society, transforming interactions, made people aware of their communicative environment.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Russian writer, exposed the Soviet Gulag system. One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, stark portrayal of a labor camp. The Gulag Archipelago, monumental historical account. Themes of resilience, dignity amidst brutality, constant vigilance against totalitarianism. Nobel Prize winner, powerful dissident voice.
An incredibly impactful group. Lastly, the book touches on genre fiction and fantasy in the 20th century.
Exploring human complexities through imaginative narratives. Whodunits first, Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes.
The Hound of the Baskervilles, A Study in Scarlet, countless short stories. Made detective fiction a major force, Victorian London, justice, human behavior, rationality, quest for truth. Watson's narration is key.
Agatha Christie. Redefined the genre. Masterful plotting. Hercule Poirot, Miss Marple, and then there were none. Murder on the Orient Express, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, with its famous twist. Intrigue, suspense, moral complexities, classic puzzle box mysteries.
G.K. Chesterton's Father Brown stories. The Blue Cross, The Hammer of God. Humble priest detective using intuition and understanding of human nature, not just clues.
Deep moral insight. Faith, redemption, complexity of good and evil. Contrasts his inductive reasoning, intuition, human nature, with deductive logic, observation. Fascinating approach.
Then dystopian fiction. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World.
Explores power, totalitarianism, where technology and pleasure suppress individuality, cost of happiness, erosion of freedom, consumerism, social control. Also wrote Island, a utopian counterpoint, Eyeless in Gaza, war, ideology, the doors of perception, psychedelics.
George Orwell's 1984. Ultimate depiction of surveillance and oppression. Totalitarian regime, Big Brother. Manipulated truth, erasure of freedoms, warning against unchecked authority. Language, propaganda, fragility of truth. Newspeak, thought crime. Terribly prescient.
In science and speculative fiction, H.G. Wells gets a mention as a pioneer.
The Time Machine, The War of the Worlds, The Invisible Man, imaginative concepts, often with social commentary embedded, really launched the genre.
Okay, that covers the major areas outlined in the source material for this deep dive. Quite a journey.
Wow, yeah, we've really covered a huge amount of ground, from ancient myths right up to, well, voices that still feel very contemporary.
We really have. It's amazing to see those foundational themes: heroism, fate, love, justice, the search for meaning, echoing and transforming across the centuries.
And hopefully for you, the learner, this overview provides a solid framework. A way to understand our cultural heritage, catch those literary references, and feel plugged into that ongoing conversation of Western thought. You've got the cheat sheet now, maybe feel a bit more informed, more confident.
Were there any aha moments for you revisiting this material? Maybe some surprising connections that stood out?
I think the connection between Saxo Grammaticus's Amleth and Shakespeare's Hamlet was pretty cool, and realizing just how much Tolkien drew from those Norse and Finnish myths. Or even the idea that Aesop's fables might have Aramaic roots. Little things like that really light up the connection.
Exactly, those threads running through it all. And hopefully this encourages you, the listener, to maybe revisit some of these authors or works that sparked your interest.
Yeah, definitely. If you were intrigued by social justice, maybe go back to Dickens or Swift, or explore some of the contemporary voices like Baldwin or Steinbeck. If philosophy grabbed you, dive deeper into Plato or the Stoics.
There's so much more to explore within each of these periods and authors. This is really just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. Okay, so to wrap up, here's a final thought to maybe chew on. Building on this idea of a literary canon.
Okay.
In our increasingly globalized world, what does a Western literary canon even mean in the 21st century? What voices, what stories, maybe from outside the traditional focus, might need to be added or reevaluated to keep that conversation truly alive and relevant today?
That's a big question. Makes you think about whose stories get told and why. Definitely something to mull over.